Welcome to Milton and King's On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, and more. Today we speak with Shi Delgrosso of ShiDel RVs and Design. We hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please subscribe and consider leaving us a rating and review. Hi, Shi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for coming on with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited, actually.
What are you up to?
I have just been doing work on my personal Class A motorhome the last few weeks, so trying to get it up to speed because we just moved in August.
Okay, so this is a sort of a brand new vehicle RV that you got.
Yeah, this one just fell in my lap. It's a country coach, so we're really excited about it.
Is it brand new, or is it something that you got and you're updating?
Oh no, it's one that I got. It's a 2004. So they don't make country coaches anymore.
Okay.
And rumor has it that I've heard that country coach is like the best motorhome ever made. So we got really lucky with this one. There's only a few of them out there. So
Okay. Well, full
yeah, they
disclosure,
don't make them anymore.
I don't know anything about RVs. I'm completely ignorant about the whole thing, which is one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, because I've always really been fascinated by it. Like, my experience with RVs has sort of been, going to the LA County Fair and seeing all the RVs there that you can kind of walk in and go inside. Like, this was like years ago. And then more recently, every once in a while, my wife and I will go, I wonder if that's something that we could do, if we could handle. So I don't know anything about it, but I'm excited to learn all about it and excited to talk to you because you seem like you really have your finger on the pulse of everything going on in that. Really, it seems like a whole subculture.
It really is. There's a whole lifestyle and a whole community, and it's such a welcoming community that it's really hard to get away from. But there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be shared out there, which is why I do what I do. This actually fell into my lap. I wasn't planning to do this. But if you and your wife want to try it out, there's a whole bunch of platforms out there, like rental platforms, that you
Mm-hmm.
can go and rent one for the weekend or the week or for a vacation and see how you like it before you actually commit to buying one.
Right. So the one you just got, you said it's known as being one of the best ever made. What constitutes the best in an RV?
Well, this one is a motorhome. It's a Class A. So Class A's are kind of like the buses that you would tour in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they look like the big buses, the square rectangular boxes. Um, the country coach, they don't make them anymore. So this was built on a Dynamax chassis. The chassis is the kind of like the trailer bed that they put everything on, with the wheels and the engine and the whole lot, right? And it has a
Mm-hmm.
Caterpillar engine. It's a diesel, all of the things. So it lasts. It's supposed to last a really long time. So it's supposed to last up to 300,000 miles. Right now, this one is a 2004, and it only has a little over 100,000 miles on it. Great condition. But even the work and the quality inside, it's real maple wood. The finishes are amazing. They use real porcelain tile. So it's not your everyday RV or your everyday camper, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
way that they put it together. I find it, it's all new to me actually, because I'm used to working on trailers and like fifth wheels and campers, and vintage campers are my favorite to work on. So building it from the frame up or tearing it down. So that's what I specialize in. So the motorhome is new to me, and it's really fun trying to figure it out as far as the electric system and the engines and the whole nine yards. But they don't make the country coach anymore, and it's supposed to be like top of the class for that time.
So this is motorhome as opposed to trailer that you'd be towing, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so that basically the car engine portion of it, with the actual like camper part of it, I guess you would say. I'm probably going to get all the lingo totally wrong, so you'll have to correct me and educate me
Oh
um,
no, you're fine.
where it's necessary. Um, so just to get a little bit of history and get back. So you obviously got into this at some point. So at somewhere along the line, you were living, I guess, a quote unquote normal life in a home in a house somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, and you're based in Las Vegas, right?
Yes, we are in Las Vegas, and we have been in a house up until this year. So up until the past year. Um,
Okay, so it's
it's
fairly a
we call it
new experience.
well, yeah, full-time living is a new experience, but as far as the lifestyle, we've been in the lifestyle since 2018, fully
Hmm.
immersed in it, right? That's when we got our first camper, our first RV. And that's how it all started in 2018 with our first one. I wasn't planning to start a business with the renovations or the repairs. Like I said, it just kind of fell in my lap. So we got our first one. It was a travel trailer, a 2017, and the interior was dark and brown and the usual from the manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to update it because I knew that we would take it camping, and we have 6 kids. So we have a lot of kids, and it would just be more comfortable to camp in an RV or a trailer as opposed to tent camping like we would previously do.
Hmm.
So I wanted to make it more homey. I updated it, I painted it, all the good stuff. I showed it to a couple of my friends, and they said, you know what, this is really good. You should post it on social media. And at the time, I was not big on social media at all. I actually try to steer away from it.
Hmm.
Um, so I posted a couple things and then it just blew up from there. I got a lot of positive feedback on my first remodel and they wanted to see more. They wanted to know how I did certain things, where I got the materials, where I bought them from, et cetera, et cetera. And then it kind of snowballed. And then I don't know, 20 some, 30 some RVs later, here I am.
Okay, so now 2018, you said, is when you kind of really started getting into it. So prior
Right.
to 2018, I guess I have sort of a two-part question. One is, were you had you had prior to 2018, had you already had experience sort of in the RV world, even from like a renter's perspective? Would you go on camping trips and do that sort of thing? Are you a camper, outdoorsy type of person? What was
Oh,
your experience with that?
absolutely.
Okay.
So, my camping experience was limited to tent camping and out of trucks. My dad would take us fishing, but we always did the tent and we always did like the roughing, right?
Hmm.
With the campfires and whatnot. I had no previous experience with campers or RVs whatsoever. I remember like one trip when I was little and my parents' friends had taken us as children just to get them out of their hair for a weekend. And I
Hmm.
thought their RV and their camper was like the best thing ever. But that was my only experience before our first one in 2018. But as far as outdoors, my husband and I are super outdoorsy. We hike all the time. We take the kids to the beach as often as we can. You know, you name it, we're outdoors. We can't be in a house, stuck in a house. We've always felt limited. So there was something missing there. And it just all kind of clicked after 2018, after all of this started coming into fruition.
Okay, now what about my second part about that question would be prior to 2018 and you renovating RVs, had you already had kind of I don't know what you call it, just like DIY experience? Could you build things? Could you fix things? Were you like around the house? Were you the person that would I don't know, fix the stove, fix the plumbing?
Yeah, I would say so from the moment I learned how to walk.
So you're a handy person.
I like to think so, but I never considered myself a handy person, right? It was just something that I enjoyed doing from time to time. I would much rather put furniture together and rehab furniture than going out and buying a brand new set of furniture. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
would always try to be frugal and save a buck and try to do everything myself. And I've always been like that, but it never clicked for me and it never, made sense up until RVs. And then I finally figured it out. All of my experience with motherhood and with the different houses that we were in and my experience in the workforce, say in hospitality, real estate, you name it, it all kind of came together once
Hmm.
I started doing this. And I take all of my past experiences and then put it into my business. Like when I was a kid, my favorite toy was this plastic car that my dad got me when I was probably 6 or 7. And it was a plastic toy car that you could take apart with big plastic screws and then put it back together. And that was
Mm.
like the best thing ever. So I think it was always kind of there for me.
Gotcha. Okay, so in some ways, you have a sort of a predisposition that is really lends itself towards maybe going in this direction because you're already sort of handy, mechanical in that sense, and you have that sort of outdoorsy experience. You've experienced camping and sort of that sort of I don't know, for lack of a better term, nomadic lifestyle.
Right.
And even if it's recreational, that kind
Right.
of primed you for what you would eventually be doing. You mentioned a couple of keywords there that I want to kind of dive into before we get too far into it. So you said that you're a mother and you have 6 children.
Yes.
Um, and so are all these children still living with you in the RV?
Three out of the six are. So with the
Okay.
six children, my husband and I are blended. So I have two from my previous, he has two from his previous, and we have two together. So we are literally the Brady Bunch. Three
Right.
boys, three girls.
Okay.
So three of them are living with us right now. My oldest daughter, she's about to be 20.
Hmm.
She was in Arizona for a minute with her dad, but she came back and she absolutely loves staying with us. Um, and then I have my 9-year-old daughter and our 3-year-old son. And the other kids, they are with their other parents, but they come and visit often.
Okay. So was
Mhm.
that how much of that was a consider? I mean, I imagine it was a huge consideration, but how hard was it? Because every child is different. Everybody
Right.
sort of has different needs. Even no matter how you raise them, somehow they just whether it's genetics or whatever it is, they all sort of have their own minds and likes and
Oh,
dislikes
absolutely.
and things like that. So was there any like tough decisions to make in terms of making the shift from going to a home to an RV in terms of, well, this child number 3 doesn't like it. Child number 2 does, but this one's more of a homebody and doesn't, what did that dynamic come into play at all as you were making decisions to go the full RV living route?
Oh, absolutely. We would have done this way sooner had it not been for that, right? For that thought process. Because the four, we call them the quad, the older four, right? They're
Hmm.
17, 17, 18, and 19. And then we
Hmm.
have the two littles from our marriage. So the quad, the four older ones, there's no way we would have been able to do this with them. Well, now we have two that have graduated, and now we have two high school seniors. So they're almost done. We
Hmm.
wanted to wait until they were done with school and, keep the home life and their bedrooms for them and keep kind of like a stable structure. But if it wasn't for that and them growing up and becoming young adults, then we probably would have done this around COVID time, 2020.
Yeah.
So we've been just like counting down the days, and we were supposed to wait another year. But this year, everything just kind of fell into place, and it was the right time. And we pulled the trigger on it. And then we
Yeah.
got rid of the house, got rid of like 90% of our stuff because it's just stuff. And
Yeah.
life is just much better now and less stressful.
Yeah. And so I imagine timing sounds like it was a very important part of the whole thing.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
Yeah. And then the other thing you had mentioned was you're doing this full time. So now this is your job. You flip was it you flip RVs? What is it you do? Is like what's the name of your business and what do you offer as service for your business?
And the name of the business is ShiDel RVs and design. So what I do is I do RV renovations. And that's how it started, was taking on clients and doing renovations and partial renovations for them and remodels. I would go in and do the work hands-on by myself and then make their spaces completely beautiful. That has evolved into social media. So now I concentrate on being a content creator, and the videos that I put out are short form. They're very direct informational because what I found doing this for like the last few years and in all of my experiences, there are so many new RV owners and even veteran RV owners that still are not sure how their systems work. They go and they take their rigs and their units to the dealership or to a repair shop, it sits there for months and months at a time, and they charge them a ridiculous amount of money, like thousands of dollars on up, right?
Hmm.
For the most simple repairs. So they're not able to enjoy their RVs and campers. They're not able to enjoy the lifestyle. They're not able to enjoy that time with their families because their units are in the repair shop. For the tiniest little things, it could be just like a quick plumbing leak that they can fix on their own. It could be one little screw. It could be, you name it. You know what I mean? There's a whole
Hmm.
bunch of different things that could potentially go wrong in an RV and camper, and they will. It's guaranteed 100% of the time. So I found that out in my experience, and I wanted to share the knowledge, and I wanted to put all of my experiences and all of my mistakes out there into short form videos so that viewers can get the information direct and for free. So they didn't have to go searching because all of the questions that I had when I started, they were not available at all.
Hmm.
So I would have to watch these long, 60-minute videos to get to one answer towards the end, right? And
Right.
most of the videos are long, drawn out. So I try to spit out the information as quick as possible. And I have found that it helps so many people out there just save money and save time and be able to enjoy it. And then it actually gives them a new self confidence that they can go out and do all of these tiny little things themselves without having
Right.
to depend on others. Right.
It's almost like it reminds me of someone who's really into like old classic cars.
Yes.
And unless you have all the money in the world to get them fixed all the time, like one of the reasons why they're a lot of time, well, just I mean, maybe it was the craftsmanship at the time or just the way they were built, but people who tend to have old classic cars, the ones that get the most enjoyment out of them are the ones that are actually working on them, and they're
Absolutely.
working on their car in their garage all the time, and they'll take it out for their Sunday spin or whatever it is. But they know how to, take apart an engine and put it back together, and that's part of the, I guess, the hobby, part of the fun. Whereas
Hmm.
if you just sort of love the car but you don't really know what goes into how it works or how to fix it, unless you got a lot of money to constantly be taking it in to get it fixed,
Right.
sounds like a similar situation where you probably do have a lot of people that get RVs, they like RVs, but maybe they're not mechanical like you might be, or and they have that sort of knowledge to where they're getting the full enjoyment out of it because they would know actually how to work on it and the kind of what goes into making an RV and fixing an RV. And so, like you said, it ends up sitting at a dealer's lot waiting to get fixed for months on end.
Oh, all the time, all the time. And the feedback that I've gotten from all of this content has been all positive, with the exception of a handful of I'm just gonna say it, guys who have been working on them one specific way. So now there's new people coming in, and there's myself, who happens to be a woman, trying to figure all this out by herself and trying to find new solutions that have been tried before or haven't been done. And we take
Hmm.
those experiences and our multitasking skills as women, and now the force and the community is just growing with women who are just tired of working on their houses all the time or tired of asking their husbands or their partners to do it for them, right? And
Hmm.
they're all like, okay, well, if this girl can do it, then for sure I can at least try something. And that's where that confidence comes in. And then it just kind of snowballs. And then I think I've created quite a monster out there. But it's mostly positive feedback, and it's so much fun for them because it's a new world. It's a new community that has opened up, and the wallpapers and the pretty interiors, and that's one aspect of it. But once you start getting into the systems like the plumbing and the electric and the framework, that's where it really starts becoming fun once you delve into it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the interiors and beautifying and all that kind of stuff, which is how
Hmm.
you got into my radar with Milton and King because we collaborated on. I guess is it your RV? It's your RV, correct?
Yes.
Um, and so you're not only when you're doing these renovations and consultations and things, you're not just doing the guts of the RV. You're actually doing the aesthetics on the
Yes.
inside, and essentially doing like a room makeover or remodel renovation to the interior. So had you had you had previous interior design experience at all, or what was your experience, or is it just like, oh, this is what I like, so this is what I'm getting, or do you feel like you've got an eye for that sort of thing for design?
You, I didn't think I did up until recently, up until I started figuring out that not everybody has the vision or the pictures that I do in my head when I walk into a space, right?
Hmm.
And each RV and each camper is unique in its own way. It doesn't matter if it's the same model, there's something completely different. It's kind of like a fingerprint, right? But as far as my previous experience, I would do my kids' bedrooms in some sort of theme. I would try to make my home a home,
Hmm.
all of the things. And I had real estate experience when I lived in Arizona years ago. And when I was doing real estate, I took a couple courses and certifications for staging, right? So I became an accredited staging professional, and ASP is what they call it. But the knowledge that they taught in that class is kind of what I always had in the back of my head, right? So it was just kind of getting that piece of paper. So I think I always kind of had the vision of what I wanted a room or a space to look like. And it just kind of came natural. And I would try to do most of it myself as far as the artwork and the pieces and any accessories because I couldn't justify spending so much money on one piece, right? That was all of my room budget. So I'd have to
Right.
try to pinch pennies, and that's how I got into it.
Yeah. And so in this one that you did of yours, you used the Oceania damask wallpaper. What was the idea behind using that? Was it like the seahorses and things like that your kids liked, or how did you decide on using that wallpaper design? And well, tell us a little bit about the space that you put it all in.
So the space is in the back suite of my motorhome, and that used to be a master suite. It had a queen bed in there, and the mattress was huge, so it kind of made it feel claustrophobic and closed in like a dark cave. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to convert that into the kids' space because the rest of the motorhome is just the main living area, right? And I wanted them to have like a space of their own. So I took out the queen bed and I custom built like a top bunk in the closet for my 3-year-old, which now my 19-year-old sleeps in because she absolutely loves it. It's cozy up there. And then I also put a twin bed on the queen platform for my other daughter. I asked them, and I had gotten their input, we were sitting in the space and I said, what do you want this to feel like? Do you want it to feel like you're in a forest? Do you want it to feel fun? Do you want it to feel colorful? What are your feelings sitting here? And my 9-year-old, 8-year-old at the time, she said, I really like the beach. And she likes
Mm,
muted colors and she doesn't like the bright colors. She doesn't like pink. You know what I mean? Like bright
yeah,
pink, like most girls do. She doesn't like the fluff. And then my 3-year-old, his favorite color is actually pink. So he likes more of the bright colors and the feminine colors, right? But I wanted to put both of those in play. And I had asked him, I said, do you like going to the beach? He goes, yeah. And I go, what do you like about the beach? And, we had the whole conversation because I also, quote unquote, homeschool them, which is a form of like unschooling, road schooling, right?
hmm,
So we have these long conversations. So I was having a conversation about their space and I asked him, what do you like about the beach? And he said, I like picking seashells with you. I like looking for animals and I like the sand and I like all of these things, right?
yeah,
That's what he identifies as a 3-year-old with the beach is all of the creatures. And so I was a little bit torn with the wallpaper designs between this one and what was the other one that it was another ocean theme.
yeah,
But I had ordered the samples and I received them and I thought I was going to go with the other one for sure. But then I got the Oceana Damask and the details on the sample were just so intricate and fun, but also classy and sophisticated in a way, right?
yeah,
And it felt like the space would be brighter with a lighter background than the other one would be. The other one was a little bit too vintage and a little bit too dark for what they were feeling at that moment. So we decided to go with Oceana Damask, and they absolutely love it.
And I guess that's a consideration when you're in an RV space that's, I guess, might be smaller. You probably want to go with a brighter color because a darker color could actually make it feel smaller and more enclosed, right?
Well, it really depends on the personality, right? It depends on your preference. Some people like the dark cave, and, even in their home bedrooms, it could work for any space, whether it
Hmm.
be big or small. And I also do consulting with my business, right? And so a lot of people just want that reassurance of what they want to do is okay. So any space that you're in, whether it be in an RV or your home, big or small, you want to make sure that you're feeling good in that space, and you want to really listen to your intuition, because when you're sitting in a space, it could look really good on a picture on Instagram for somebody else's room, right? But then when you order the samples and you get the samples, there's just something about it that you can't quite put your finger on that doesn't feel right. And that you really have to consider that. So whether it be bold colors or muted, light colors in an RV, or even dark, some people
Hmm.
like feeling like they're closed in a little bit because that's their little cave, and that makes them feel more comfortable than being in a wide open space, right?
Right.
Where they feel a little bit more exposed. So it really depends on the person.
Did you have any difficulties with putting wallpaper inside in the RV? Was there certain sort of considerations in terms of the panels or the type of wood or the type of because I'm guessing that the wood in an RV, there's considerations for weight, right? So some woods are heavier than others, and you probably want to put
Oh,
as much
absolutely.
lightweight stuff in an RV as possible for fuel consumption and all sorts of things like that. So, were there considerations in terms of like putting the wallpaper up that you had in terms of what surface you were working with?
Yeah, so let me just say that my experience with wallpaper has been quote unquote fun. So I've worked with wallpapers that have peeled down with any kind of glue, special adhesives, you name it. I've tried it, right? And
Hmm.
I've had wallpapers that have stuck that will never be removed ever again. I've worked with thin material, more of like a plastic vinyl, right? I've
Hmm.
worked with woven. Whoa, my goodness, I've worked with everything. So what I found that works, and as far as the wall and the interior and the weight, you don't really have to consider the weight of the existing walls, because the existing walls in a regular camper, they're like a 1/8 of an inch plywood. And then they put like this quote unquote wallpaper over it, but it's not really wallpaper. It's more of like a laminate wall. So
Hmm.
they manufacture the wall in a factory in one huge sheet, and then they laminate that paper or whatever they decide to use over it. And then everything is screwed into that. So I don't really think it's wallpaper. But if you're putting like a new design on there, like a new wallpaper, you want to make sure that whatever surface you're putting it on is clean and prepped and smooth. There's a lot of surfaces on there that are pretty rough, or somebody tries to take the old wallpaper off, the manufactured wallpaper, let's call it that. And then they reveal the plywood underneath, the really thin 1/8 of an inch plywood.
Hmm.
Well, when you take that off and reveal the plywood, then you're going to get grain in there. You're going to get the little splinters. You're going to get all of that stuff that you have to smooth down before you even put the new wallpaper. So I usually suggest to just clean it, prep it, and put it over the existing manufactured laminate paper to cut out the time and the work and the headache of sanding it all down. It'll work.
And when you say prep, are you referring to like using a primer?
Um, Depending on the wall itself, you don't have to use a primer for a smooth wall in order
Hmm.
to put new wallpaper on there. By prepping, I mean really cleaning it, because what happens in a camper and an RV is it goes on so many trips, and it's in so many different types of terrain and temperatures, and and you're going to get pet dander in there, you're going to get dirt in there, you're going to get oils from cooking because it's such a small space, so the oils stick to everything, right, when you're making
Hmm.
breakfast or dinner. Any previous smokers, you or even campfires, and your window is open, it all gets stuck into those interior walls and cabinets, and you can't see it because most of the interiors are brown from the manufacturer. So it's
Hmm.
hard to clean what you don't see. So by prepping, I mean really using a degreaser. I like to use Crud Cutter. It starts with a K, Krud, Cutter, Kutter. And that is my favorite degreaser and cleaner to use because it just takes all of that off.
Are you always doing interior design as a part of it, or is that something that's kind of like going the extra mile? Is it more just building out sort of the bare bones of the RV? Is there always that design element that's a part of it?
The design element is my favorite part of it.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so that's what I prefer to do. There's tons of mobile repair guys out there, right? Or you can even take them to shops or whatnot. If it's little repairs that I can fix right away, then yes, I will do that. I'll install like ACs and appliances and whatnot. But my favorite part of the business is doing the consulting or doing a full design with the vision and the vision boards and the edited photos and the staging, and the whole process is what I absolutely love about what I do. It was my business was evolving into strictly repairs. I would get calls every day. Hey, I have this. Can you fix it? I have this. Can you fix it? And then it got a bit mundane because that's not what I enjoy doing. I really enjoy doing that on my own
Hmm.
flips or my own campers and my own RVs so that it can take the time to really figure it out and put new systems in there. But as far as clients, I prefer to do the design and the visionary aspect for them.
Gotcha. Do you find that most RVs, in terms of, because you were talking about, with the 1/8 inch wood paneling and all that kind of stuff, are you
Hmm.
finding that the majority of RVs, I guess in the, let's just say the last 10 years, are they all sort of the same, or are there real differences in, you know, let's say in different price ranges? Are you really getting, much better grade, interiors from one to the other, or are they all kind of just coming off the manufacturing line and they're largely the same?
That's a popular question, and it's kind of a loaded question, right? Everybody wants to know what the best brand for their type of RV is, and there's really no straightforward answer to that because they're all built pretty similar. If it's a regular RV, if it's not like a higher class motorhome or anything like that, right?
Hmm.
If it's just like a regular trailer or a regular class C, which is like a drivable one with a cab over that you've seen, the smaller ones,
Hmm.
or if it's like a fifth wheel that you tow in the back of your truck, they're all pretty built. They're built pretty similar. So they're built on a chassis, which is like the wheels and the floor that they're built on. And then they're built with either aluminum framing or wood framing. Then you have some insulation, but for the most part, they're all pretty much the same as far as materials. I haven't really seen a company out there go above and beyond because there's such a demand for RVs, especially since COVID, right?
Hmm.
So the numbers on the RV sales during COVID were ridiculously through the roof, and there was more of a demand than there was supply, so they were pumping them out. So when I usually talk to somebody and they ask me what year should I go for, everybody's looking for brand new, right?
Hmm.
I recommend buying something that's used because it's been broken in with one or two previous owners. They've gotten all the glitches out. If there's wall paneling or whatnot coming down, because most of them are built with staples and nails,
Hmm.
unfortunately, right? So I like to go in and reinforce all of that. But when you have an older unit that has had previous owners, they know what the glitches are and they can kind of relay that to you. But straight out of the factory, they were pumping them out so fast and they were skipping so many steps, right?
Oh no.
That they're kind of all falling apart right now, which is the fun part for me, but kind of a headache for other people is trying to figure out what they need to fix. But for the most part, they're all built the same.
Well, that's what was sort of kind of hinting at, because you always
Hmm.
wonder if you're paying like a, let's say a more exorbitant price point, are
Right,
you really getting something that's way better in terms of, I mean, maybe, I mean, I don't know, you would know, maybe you're getting something in terms of motor coaches, maybe you're getting, better engines or better fuel efficiency or something. But in terms of like,
right.
the aesthetics and what everything's made out of and the wood paneling and all that kind of stuff, it sounds to me like you're saying that's kind of all the same stuff.
It's kind of all the same stuff. And that's why I usually recommend if you want to take it on and, you want to try a new project and, you want to expand your knowledge, then definitely try doing an older one on your own. And then you'll start to see exactly how they're put together or not so much.
Yeah. So you're
Right?
so you must be seeing. So it sounds like what you're saying is that in terms of things like repairs and things that are needed, you're seeing a lot more newer models needing repairs than older models. Is that safe to
Oh,
say?
absolutely. Absolutely. I do. And then that's why I actually prefer working on vintage campers. So anything before like the 1980s and even the early 1990s is what they consider vintage now. But I like working on those because they have better materials that they've worked with and they seem to withstand it. Their paneling on the exteriors are made out of aluminum instead of like the fiberglass that you see nowadays. You know what I mean? You get one tear in your exterior fiberglass and you'll have to replace the whole thing if you don't want a patch job. Those little things. So that's what I recommend is just getting an older model and you'll save yourself tons of money doing that. The ones that you feel like you need to buy brand new because it has a warranty on there or et cetera, whatever your reason is, or because you just want something brand new, like a new house, that's great. But you're gonna end up getting a little bit frustrated because all these little things are gonna need to be fixed and it's gonna be in the shop for a while. So might as well just save money and do it on your own.
So it sounds like a case of they don't make them like they used to.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Wow. I'd love to dive in a little bit into sort of just RV living. That's sort of what I find personally most exciting or most interesting, as someone who kind of looks on from his apartment and wonders what that'll be like. Um,
It's great.
so you said you're in Vegas. So is it?
Hmm.
I don't want not to give away where you live or anything, but is it? Are you still in like an RV park with a bunch of other people living out of their RVs, or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now we are stationed in community. And the
Okay.
community that we found, the kids absolutely love because there's other full timers there with kids. And do you remember back in the day where the kids would go out? And I know you remember because you're probably one of them, like me. You'd go out and you would just play all day.
Hmm.
And we wouldn't come back until your parents called you in or until it got dark. But we have lost that in the last few years as a community, right? Now, kids nowadays, they get stuck on their electronics, they get stuck in their bedrooms, there's no communication within the families, all of the above. Um,
Right.
but with the community that we found with the RV resort, there's other full timers with kids here. So the littles is what we call our little two. They wake up, they jump out the door, and they are playing and dirty and scratched up and bruised until it gets dark and cold and it's time to get inside. Trying to get them inside is like pulling teeth, I swear. So
Mm.
we want that type of lifestyle and that community for them. Now, in the summertime here in Vegas, it gets excruciatingly hot, right?
Yeah, I was
We're
gonna
talking
say,
like
how do you deal with that?
120 degrees. It's ridiculous. So that's the time where we move. We're kind of like snowbirds in a way, right? Or kind of opposite. But that's when we go up to nearby mountains and nearby cooler temperatures and the kids go find friends there at campgrounds and other resorts or wherever we decide to go at the time. But the nice
Mm.
thing throughout the year is if we want to just pick up and go, we pick up and go. There's nothing tying us down, and they're not in the school system anymore. So we can go and learn about these different lessons and about life and about animals and about geography in person instead of having them sit in the classroom and read it from a textbook that they're not going to remember. So it's awesome for us.
Do you, since you are sort of doing the homeschooling thing in that sense, are you going to places where they learn history and things like that?
Absolutely. So every day is a lesson. Every little activity is a lesson. Um, there's conversations about the tiniest things. So if they come to me and say, "Hey, I want to learn about butterflies, in the forest." Okay, let's go to the forest, right? Or even hit our US history. If they say, "Hey, I want to go to a monument." Okay, well, let's plan a time to go there. Or I want to
Hmm.
learn about Native Americans and their adobe houses. Okay, let's go to Arizona and Utah. Any of those things, right? So I try to teach the lessons or have them teach themselves with feeling it and touching it and experiencing that atmosphere and that terrain.
That's really neat. Do you find
Hmm.
that they're retaining the knowledge very well, and that they're becoming, like more so, or equivalent to them being in a classroom? Are they? Do you feel like
Uh,
they're soaking it
Absolutely.
in?
Yeah. So that's a whole nother podcast discussion, right? Um,
Yeah.
a lot of people are unaware, but there's this, I want to say movement, but it's been out since like the 60s and 70s. So I don't think it's much of a movement nowadays, but it's a choice that people didn't think they had, they do have now. So when you go to the school systems and say you want to homeschool, right? Depending on
Hmm.
where you live and what the requirements are. Here in Vegas, we don't have a lot of requirements, so I can say I'm homeschooling, but I'm not following a set curriculum like they do in a classroom. There's this quote
Hmm.
unquote movement called unschooling, and that's kind of a bad term for it. But unschooling is kind of like lessons that are child led. So instead of them sitting in a classroom, and I can say this because I have four older ones that have been through the school system and I have that experience with them, right? So I can kind of compare
Hmm.
the two. But when they're sitting in a classroom, they're not retaining as much information. I would try to talk to the quad, the older ones, and then I would try to have discussions with them. What did you learn today? What happened in school? What did you learn about history? This and that. And all of the time they would say, I don't know, or nothing, or whatever. But my teacher was really mean, or there was something that happened in the lunchroom, or this and that, or somebody said something. It was always about social depression or anxiety, and I don't know, maybe that was my kids, but 4 out of 4 were coming home and not sharing anything. They were really closed off, right? So they didn't retain a
Hmm.
lot of information as far as the lessons that were taught in their classrooms. And think about it. How much information can they retain when they're competing with 30 some other kids in a classroom for one teacher's attention, right? So, with
Right.
the unschooling and the child led system without a curriculum, I'm able to ask my kids, hey, what would you like to learn today? Or what would you like to learn this week? They come to me and say, I want to learn about this. For example, instead of my daughter saying, hey, I want to learn Spanish that you can, learn in the classroom, which is great, she comes to me and says, I want to learn Korean. Okay, why do you want to learn Korean? Oh, because my favorite pop group is Blackpink. You know what I mean? And I want to understand the words
Right.
that they're singing about. Well, that's great. So when a child or even an adult, when we're interested in a certain topic and there's a reason for our interest, we dive into it a lot further and deeper, and we retain that knowledge for a lot longer, for lifelong in some instances, right? Than we would
Hmm.
somebody trying to talk to us, teaching us about something that we have no interest in, right?
Right.
So those skills, they just kind of retain, I find, in
Yeah.
this system compared to like a regular school system. And the first question that always comes up is, well, what about their social life? Okay, well, they have this huge community of kids that they play with 24/7. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like also the one real benefit is their aside from like the direct educational benefits of
Hmm.
experiencing things, is they have an engaged parent, and that, a lot of times that's what's really lacking because it's no secret that the U.S. school systems are failing a lot of the kids.
Right.
If you don't have the support at home, if you don't have your parents saying, do your homework or whatever it is, or just being engaged with, what's going on in the classroom, then it's a gap in the kids' ability to learn because they don't have that reinforcement at home. Whereas they're directly engaging with home to learn, which is, I think there's definitely something to that.
I agree 1,000%, which is another reason why we chose to go this route and why we're living this lifestyle. It's not for everybody. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm not going to paint rainbows, right? You either love it or you don't. It is what it is. But
Yeah.
we chose this lifestyle because here's what happens, especially here in America, is you try to get the big house and you try to get the fancy cars and you try to get all of these consumption items, right? Because that's how we're taught to live.
Hmm.
More you have, the more you consume, the higher your status, right? Or the happier you'll be. But mental health cases are showing that that is not the case. So, what we really wanted to bring back with our family, and we've been like this since we got together with the quad, that was the most important thing for us when we became a blended family, was we want to engage with the kids as much as possible, go on all of these vacations, take them out, never be at home, right? Um,
Hmm.
with the littles, it's really hard to spend that quality time as a parent with one or 10 kids when you're constantly working, trying to pay for that house, trying to pay for those cars, trying to pay for all the utilities just to retain that status and maintain it, right? The cost of living nowadays, you know what this is. It doesn't match up with the income. It's so crazy. Like the times that
Yeah.
we're in. So instead of hitting the pavement and hustling and causing stress, because I've had my moments where we were trying to do that, trying to provide so much, but it was the wrong type of thing that our kids needed. They needed mom and dad, and they needed that one-on-one time. They didn't need new phones or this or whatnot, right? So
Right.
I stressed myself out so much working and even trying to build my business in the beginning, just working and hitting and 24/7. And it just was not working. So I finally had to step back and take a lot of step backs and say, you know what makes me the most happy? What makes my kids the most happy? How can I help them grow and evolve? Oh, it's actually being present. But it's really hard for parents to be present nowadays when they're constantly chasing in order to
Hmm.
provide for their kids that they never see, right?
Right. No,
It's
that makes a lot
nuts.
of sense. Going back to the sort of day-to-day living, so you're sort of based in Las Vegas, and when it gets too hot, you travel to other locations.
Hmm.
Aside from like the main trips, so do you have basically like two or three home bases where you go like, okay, this is home in Las Vegas, this is home, let's say in, I don't know, somewhere in northern Nevada or something that's a bit cooler. Is that sort of how do you have sort of like your anchor like RV communities that you go to?
Yeah, so our two is Las Vegas, obviously, and then Mount Charleston and Lee Canyon. So Mount Charleston is maybe 45 minutes away from where we are on the south end of Las Vegas. It's a quick drive up the mountain, but it's a
Okay.
world away. It's a world of
It's a
difference.
whole different climate.
It's completely different. It's just like you cross this barrier, this invisible shield, and then you're feeling one sort of way, and then you cross the shield, and then all of a sudden, all your worries are gone. It's pretty crazy, but that's where the kids love to go, and we love going in the campgrounds up there. There's three different campgrounds that we take our smaller camper to, so we don't always take the motorhome, right? I have a couple other small vintage campers that I take up there. Um,
Hmm.
or you can also do tent camping if you want to. But the kids absolutely love it. They love chasing the creatures and the trees and the smells and meeting new friends out there. So it's not one
Yeah.
specific home base up there, it's just the entire mountain that they love.
Do you ever run into any issues in terms of? Because I'm guessing it sounds like this community is growing bigger and bigger, and more people are getting involved. And
Yes.
obviously, social media helps spread that. Do you ever have an issue where you want to go to one of your sort of anchor communities that you want to set up at, and it's full? Or as of right now, is it still like oh no, we know we can go there and we're fine?
Well, it depends on where you're going, right? But for the most part, it has become pretty saturated. But to be fair, there's a lot of new up and coming campgrounds or resorts that they're building because now instead of going into real estate and building buildings, if you start doing research, right, you'll find that a lot of new campgrounds and RV parks and resorts are coming up because a lot of investors are finding that that's where the money is and there's little overhead. So all they have to do is
Hmm.
build the land or buy the land, right? And then have your basic utilities, which is the sewage, the electric, and whatever else, right? But those are your two main ones. So just as long as you put
Hmm.
those systems in place, you build it however you want to build it. You can build it with gravel, you can build it with, paved spots, whatever you want to do. And the overhead is so ridiculously low. So investors are now coming in and building more RV parks. So you'll start to see them
Hmm.
pop up a lot. So, yes, a lot of them are busy and some of them require reservations way ahead of time. And a lot of them are booked on popular weekends, but you'll always find the ones that are available. And if you have the capabilities and you know how to dry camp or boondock, which is going out and taking your rig and your RV out into a secluded place with no electric hookup or no sewage hookup, right? If you like that, and a lot of people do that, you can go literally anywhere. And the technology we have nowadays, you can put a new solar system or an updated solar system in your unit and completely live 24/7 off the grid, which is really nice.
Wow.
Hmm.
Do you find that the newer technologies like the solar panels are? Do you find that they're effective?
Absolutely. And then a lot of nomads that are living the lifestyle, that's what they actually prefer, especially van lifers, right? So van lifers is a completely different community, but still within the same, community, right? Um,
Hmm.
but they're really big on solar power and living off the grid and being able to not answer to anybody, right? Or not pay
Hmm.
for their cost of living. Um, it goes back to like homesteading too. If you want like an actual home base, a lot of people are buying up land and setting up their RVs there and living in their RV full time until they decide to build an actual structure, right? And then
Yeah.
growing their own food. A lot of people are going back to the basics and building their own communities, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
In terms of like, I would imagine when you are traveling or when you're setting up at these places, there are a lot of things that maybe when you're just living in an apartment or a house that you don't have to think about that in your situation you do have to think about in terms of even just I don't know I don't want to be dramatic and say basic survival but things like I'm guessing you have a generator, right?
Um,
And you have to make sure you,
yeah, in this one, we do have a generator, and a generator is what is needed in order to power the air conditioner, like anything that's 110 and a
Mhm.
120 volts, a regular outlet per se, right? In basic terms. So to power the microwave or to power the AC or the electric outlets, you do need a generator unless you have the solar system in there with the inverter and you're able to work off the electric power with your natural resources.
Right. So if you have a generator, you have to make sure you have enough fuel storage as well.
Right. So there's a lot of generators out there that are dual generators. So you can either power it with propane or gas. There's also
Hmm.
generators out there that are powered with solar panels. So your options are limitless.
Gotcha. So it seems like it's becoming easier than it ever has at this
Definitely
point.
more convenient.
Do you find that there are I mean, I know you're in Nevada, so maybe this answers my question, but I was going to ask you, are there any locations, certain states or cities or areas that you find are more friendly to RVs? Generally speaking, like you find, oh, if I find, Utah to be really good because, the freeway overpasses are have high clearance or whatever it might be, do you find that there's certain places that are just more friendly to RV culture?
As far as the terrain and the highways, here's a little quick tip, right? If you're traveling in a bigger rig or bigger RV, get yourself a trucker's map. So there's a certain map that semi truckers use and delivery guys use, and the routes that they use that are friendly to height restrictions or even like weight or width restrictions, right? Curves up the mountains and whatnot. So invest in that map on Amazon, and that's going to be your best friend when you're traveling the road. Definitely do your research first because they're building a lot of highways and roads that are friendly, and they're taking all of that into consideration. When you're going to any site, no matter where it is, like a campground or an RV park, make sure that you're calling ahead of time and asking them what their max length is, what their width of the pad is, all of those things, and then really know the dimensions and the specifications of your specific unit so you know that if it'll fit or not. But as far as socially friendly or more socially accepting, the community as a whole, it doesn't matter where you are, you're going to find new friends. And these are the friends that you'll pick up and continue to talk to and connect in some way. And they're kind of like pen pals, right? And it's easy to
Hmm.
stay connected when you have mobile Wi Fi and your phones and your computers. And a lot of these people are actually on social media trying to make a name for themselves because they do want to do it full time and they don't want to be stuck to a job. And the best way to do that is to create content, you know? So the
Hmm.
community is just growing in that sense. And they're all, I would say that the majority of them are super friendly and accepting.
I imagine, as with any sort of subculture or social community, there's pros and cons.
Yes.
I guess without asking you to be negative necessarily, are there any things that you think you should like you need to watch out for or you need to be wary of when it comes to those communities at all? Does it attract certain types of people that aren't good as well as ones that like obviously it's going to attract people who love adventure,
Right.
who love risk, who love, non like traditional ways of doing things, but are there other sorts of, you know, personalities that it attracts as well that you have to be careful of?
Yes and no. It's actually reversed. So what I mean by that is for the longest time, most of these full timers and most of the recreational people who have been doing this for years, not saying anything, right, to a specific type of person, but they tend to be older married couples, retired, that are able to spend some money living this full
Hmm.
time and they're very comfortable and set in their ways, right? And they have their little
Hmm.
dogs with them. And I've met so many of them that are super friendly, but there's still some out there that are very in their lane. But what's happening now is ever since COVID and ever since social media, and this has been just growing as a community, the demographics are completely changing. So you still have that type of demographic out there, but now it's expanding into younger people and millennials and Gen Zers that are now coming into young adults and traveling. And this is their chosen way of life instead of waiting to do it when they're retired, right? And building their fortune and working themselves to the ground. Now it's actually reversed to where you have the younger folks coming in and doing their vacations and their retirement first before committing to any kind of stationed lifestyle, right? So you'll find
Hmm.
a lot of younger people out there. You'll find a lot of families out there and that are in the same mindset as we are, or maybe they can't afford the cost of living anymore, right? And then they
Hmm.
see this as an alternative, and it's a great alternative. They'll see mixed cultures. Like there used to be only one specific demographic, which was the majority, but now you have people from all over the US, all over the world, actually. You have Europeans coming in, you have um, the Latin community coming in, you have the African American community coming in, and these families, their families have never done it before, and now they're trying something new. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's growing as a whole, like it's becoming one big melting pot, which is absolutely beautiful. But there's still those communities that are quote unquote old school, right? That are kind of trying to stay in their own lane. And there's some parks out there that will limit the age of your rig. Like you can't go in if your rig is older than 10 years, right? Any kind of camper or
Hmm.
unit. There's some parks out there that accept only motorhomes or whatever. So that's where kind of you'll start to understand and you'll start to see where you should and shouldn't kind of go. You know what I mean? Depending on the park itself.
Yeah. When you take the motor home, do you have to make sure you bring like do you have to tow a smaller vehicle so that if you need to kind of like go into town or get around that you can do it a lot easier like a bike or something like that?
There's so many options with that. Ours is a big 45-foot diesel pusher, so we can tow our truck. So we also have a 2500 Denali, a GMC, and that's a pretty
Mhm.
big weight, right? But we're able to tow that. A lot of these motorhomes and even Class Cs, which are the smaller RVs that you can drive, they're able to tow smaller cars or sedans or whatever. Just really pay attention to your tow capacity on your vehicle and the tow capacity on your hitch. That gives you freedom to explore that area even further.
Yeah.
Oh, also, electric
Well,
bikes are huge in the community right now. So invest in an electric
hmm,
bike because everybody has one.
interesting. It sound I mean there's so I mean I have so many questions and there's so much to learn.
Oh, absolutely.
It sounds like there is a huge sort of learning curve as you get into it. It sounds like you've gained a whole wealth of knowledge just in the short, I guess what is it, 5 years that you've been
Yeah.
kind of going into it and more in depth. But I've already taken up an hour of your time, and I don't want to, you know, wear out my welcome. So, where can people get more information about you, about whether it's hiring you to beautify their RV or renovations or consultations? Give us all the details.
Absolutely. So the main website that I have is shidelrvs.com. That's ShiDelRVS.com. That's my main website. I am big on TikTok. If you guys have TikTok, the handle for that is also Shidel RVs, and it's the same on any platform. And then the best way to get a hold of me privately is through DMs on Instagram, and that's the same handle, Shidel RVs. So I try to make it easy.
Yeah. And then what people can do is they can get in touch with you for what is it that most people are contacting you for?
Right now, most people are contacting me about questions and consultations. So they're asking little questions on their repairs or if they're trying to do it themselves. And
Hmm.
then I do consulting an hour at a time, or we can do like a 6 month consulting. And I also do RV sales for them. So I'll do their listing, and this is where my real estate experience comes in. So if they've
Oh
had
wow.
their RV on the market for a while and it's just not moving, it's not selling, they don't know what they're doing wrong, I consult on that as well, and I help them with their listing, and then I put it out there in front of my audience, and my audience is like over 120K right now. So that's a lot of exposure for them. So a lot of it
Yeah.
is actually done through my computer remotely, which is really nice.
Wow. Well, there's so much information that we packed into that hour. I just want to thank you so much for jumping on with me and giving me some of your time and all that information. That's really, really great.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we can touch base down the line and just check in and see how things are developing, and even as the kids grow up and challenges and benefits they have of RV life and just all that kind of stuff. I'd be so interested in following up at some point and just seeing how it's all going and seeing what your perspectives are.
Yes, please. That would be really fun. I mean, we can talk about this all day, which I do all the time anyway.
I literally feel like I can. I really feel like I can just like go on and go on. Like I had some questions written down. I'm like, oh, there's so much I wanted to get to, but we'll save that for another time. And for now, I'll let you go. But thank you again so much for getting on with me today. And I wish you all the best with the RV life and with your business. And I look forward to talking again soon.
Thanks for having me. This is actually really fun.